All right, here we go. Well, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm painting a film positive, which is what you need to make a screen for screen printing. Usually it's a photographic process, but I'm tired of that kind of stuff sometimes, so I figure I'll hand paint one today. You see, it's clear film. I'm just using a little guide underneath it to paint on, and then I can make a screen from it and print from that, and then I'll hand color it after that. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm doing this probably for next year, so I like to get everything going beforehand, because if I do it all by hand, it's going to take a long time. So basically anything black on here will block the light from exposing a photosensitive screen, and that washes out, and that's where the ink will pass through. So in screen printing you use film positives. In litho printing you use film negatives. So the way it works is you start with a positive like this, you burn it onto a screen, your screen becomes a negative, and then when you print ink through it onto whatever you're printing, a t-shirt or a poster or anything, that becomes a positive again. So you go positive, negative to the screen, positive again to what you're printing. So I decided, just for fun and boredom, I'm going to hand paint a positive. And before, I'll probably still do it. I think I will. Do some hand painted screens too, and just directly paint with screen block on a screen and not even use film. So I don't care if this is real rough, I kind of want it that way. So I want it to look painted when it's printed. I'm very tired of production printing. I could probably safely say I've printed, I don't know, maybe 1 million shirts in my life, and it gets kind of tiresome, production printing, so I want to do it more creatively. And most of the stuff I sell now is all hand painted, but I've got 1 million years background of screen printing, so I can incorporate that too and still make it a totally unique piece. The term silk screen, which is what people learn in high school to call it, silk screening. They don't make screens out of silk anymore. I mean, maybe some purist person would try to find silk, but usually the reason they quit using something like that is because it sucks, you know. So they don't really use silk anymore. They use polyester for screens, and you can get all different meshes, fine, super fine mesh for doing really tight detail stuff, or really open screen mesh for doing, like, if you want a ton of white ink on a black shirt, you're going to use a really open mesh to let the ink through. If I want lots of detail and I don't want it to fall apart and just bleed all over itself, I'm going to use a really fine mesh, fine line work, and it won't put a ton of ink on the shirt to where it feels like you're wearing a wetsuit. Get big sweat mark where all the ink is piled on the shirts. So out here in the desert, nice and hot. But we're in the high desert near Joshua Tree, so we're in the altitude a little bit. It's not as hot as like Palm Springs yet, which is just a few minutes to the mountain bottom from us. Basically, to get here, you go to Palm Springs and turn and head up the mountain. So we're only like 105 compared to their 118 or something. So this is really, I don't care how this comes out. I'm just going to lay the paint down, see what happens when I burn it. When I burn the screen, I'll just go with it, and then like these really light areas won't burn. A lot of these lines won't burn. But compared to most people print out their film now, and it really sucks. The quality sucks. People think computers made everything better, but in screen printing, if you ask me, computers made everything suck. Because you can't get decent film to make a screen. We used to use graphic arts film, which you could get just crystal clear lines and super opaque film, but all of that stuff's illegal to use now. So you gotta do everything a little shittier quality than you used to, for the sake of convenience, I guess. So you wouldn't know that unless you actually ran process cameras back in the day. Back in the day meaning like, I don't know, 20 years ago. So I kind of want this to come out all funky and weird. I want to see how it takes to a screen. I'll come back out over it later if it's really light and fix it up a little bit. But I want this to be kind of primitive looking, which is easy for me to do. So I gotta then take the so there's a little drawing under here, you can see it, just a real rough line drawing. So this is actually film. This clear that I'm using is left over from my old process cameras that's been sitting forever. I thought, hey, might as well just paint on it, you know? Because I was just going to paint this directly on the screen, but then you have to paint in reverse, which I'm still going to do that. Maybe I'll do a color to go under this and paint that in reverse on a separate screen. So let's see if we can just... A lot of times you'd be very surprised how this stuff will burn. For many years I just used the sunlight to burn screens, and I still see old guys like me doing that. Don Rock on Instagram, I see him burning screens with the sun, and I used to be able to get just perfect resolution that way. Just blew people's minds. Everybody thinks you have to have expensive equipment to do everything. If you ask me, the lack of expensive equipment forces you to be creative. You make do with what you have. Whether it be making a movie, recording music, or making art. You don't need expensive shit for any of that. Robert Rauschenberg said that if he couldn't find the materials to make his art in trash cans within a couple blocks of his house in New York, it wasn't worth doing. And look up Robert Rauschenberg and you'll see what I'm talking about. So he made pretty cool art out of garbage. I think he actually did a Talking Heads cover too. He liked to layer colors, like on glass. Sliding glass doors, he'd do different colors and art on each door and then slide them and overlap them. So this is good stuff to do in the desert when it's too hot to go outside. And I'm old, so my back is trashed. So I've got they fucked up my back surgery a long time ago, and we have to go back in August and let them saw me up again. But, you know, I don't know if that's their fault. Could be maybe I trashed my back over the years a few times. Driving off of cliffs. Punk rock brawls. Lifting millions of pounds of t-shirts over the years. Might have something to do with it. But I doubt it. It's somebody else's fault. So. You can literally screen print for nothing. Just buy a set of hinges and start printing. The thing that irks me more than anything I see on YouTube is people printing backwards. It's a primitive style of printing, but there are certain correct things to do. When they pull their squeegee the wrong direction, it just irks me. See these lines like that, only part of that will burn. Some of the light will get through it. So if I was doing like some customer's job, I'd have to be all anal and keep everything all perfect, but this is more artistic screen printing. I mean, I'm making a primitive form of printing even more primitive using kind of high-tech stuff like the film itself. Back in the day, you had to cut your stencils out of paper. There was no photographic ways to make screens like today. So you would literally just have big blocks of letters and colors and we'd use ruby lith and amber lith, and nobody knows what that is anymore. It wasn't that long ago either. See, I could cut cut some of this out of ruby lith, but then it would lose its primitive feel. I want it to be rough. It's noisy out here in the desert tonight. I don't know what's going on out there. Usually you hear the coyotes. I'm going to take the drawing out of here. I don't know what I got to fill in. So I was using this as the guide. Can you see that? That was the guide. And I just freehanded it, you know. Okay, hold on a second. So now I can see all the places I missed. Right there. That should be a partial tooth. Most of this will probably burn, but some of it I want to make sure it burns. So I got to make it really black. Edges of the eyeballs are there. Once it dries, you can go over it again. I'm just using like cheap acrylic paint for this. And maybe I'll put some. I got all this space to fill up with something. This is a little transparent. I don't know how this looks, so well, if it looks too horrible, I just won't put it up. And you'll never get to see it. Alright. I'm gonna wash out this brush in a second. I haven't done this for a while because nobody watches them, I don't think. But I figure might as well just film it for the hell of it since I'm doing it anyways. So, if they do watch them, they don't tell you. Which I don't really care. I don't do it for that. I do it for me. And for whoever else might like it, you know. Now this looks really the tones are all weird. weird and stuff, but when this prints, it'll look totally different than this. As far as the consistency of the... See, you're looking at light through it because I work on a light table. So, because I'm blinder than shit. So I'm not trying to teach you anything, but some printers, really, it just gives you ideas on what you can do. I mean, you could literally... I used to know a guy in Aspen, Colorado that used to go out and get aspen leaves off the trees, and he would use those. He would just expose those right onto the screen like a piece of film. And the more light he let burn it, the veins of the leaves would show up and everything. It's pretty cool. Could never duplicate that stuff, so it's kind of one-off stuff, you know? Which is what I really like anyway, so to me it's all... And the reason I got into all this in the first place was just it's the closest thing you could do to make art. And now I'm just taking more of the production part out of it and bringing it back to art, you know? So we will let the light do its thing on this when it burns, and the light will decide which parts burn to the screen and which don't. See, the real light stuff like that, only part of that will burn, but it could look really cool. It could look really horrible too. But like I said, I'll hand paint after this on the garment, and that makes the garment even more of a cool thing. I saw a lot of hand painted stuff now compared to production stuff. Still sell, when I do production these days, it might be 100 pieces or a couple hundred pieces compared to the old days where we would do thousands and thousands of the same thing. I just get too bored. I can't do it. So I'd much rather spend a lot more time and make everything more unique. People get to have a cool, unique thing. Might be similar to another one, but each one is its own thing. So like I said, after I screen print these, I'll go back and hand color them or bleach them or do something cool with it. So, anyways, that's enough of that. I'm gonna get out of here. Because my paintbrush is drying up and I gotta clean it. Haven't done one of these in a while. Maybe somebody will watch it, I don't know. If you do watch it, say something, say hi. Say, you suck, Otis. You can say anything you want, I don't care. I needs to be a little more around to it. Alright. From the desert, I'm leaving. I'm not leaving for real, but I'm gonna leave you. Adios.